name is Justin, and I'm back to reading Chapter 2 of The Ghost of Amalgam, the Linking Tome. And once again, this is Chapter 2, Gathering of the Revenant City. So, let me continue on. Jason screamed in horror as the driver sped off, leaving 3 girls unconscious and dying in its wake. The house filled with cries for an ambulance as partygoers came running out of the house to help. Lauren's body rolled a few feet away from Amy and Renee's. All were bleeding profusely. She felt calm and rested when she opened her eyes. She saw Jason screaming over her and was puzzled as to why. He was looking down on her with a sickened expression. Her memories rushed back. Daddy left us. I never seen my mother cry. Jason is dating Amy. Amy and I fought. We got hit by a car. I got hit by a car. I'm okay, she said to Jason. He didn't respond. He was screaming for help. Jason, I'm fine. Help me up, said Lauren. She placed her hand on his shoulder and knew something was terribly wrong. Her hand was transparent. She raised the other and rubbed them together. They felt gelatinous to her touch, and she rubbed her face, which felt the same. Frightened, she stood quickly, all too easily. She didn't feel the weight of her body. She looked at her ethereal form, and it was identical to her old physical self. Her ghostly garments matched their material counterpart, stained with blood and similarly torn. A subtle pink glow emanated from her brown-skinned body. Inside her stomach was a white light amplifying her brownish-pink glow. Lauren moved her hands back to her face and ran them through her hair. The strands felt tactile like her skin until she turned her fingers where it became misty as if it was made out of steam. She panicked as she stood among a gathering of Amy's guests, none of them looking at her but down at the ground. She stepped away and saw her body lying in their midst. Her hands extended above her head and blood was running from her nose and mouth. Her legs were heavily scarred and appeared broken. Frantic people in her peripheral view turned her attention to the second and third mass of huddled kids. Renee emerged from one mass and stood surveying her body much like Lauren, then looked dreadfully frightened at her. She could only mutter, Lauren, which sounded equal portions of shock and a plea for help. You bitch, said Amy, and Lauren saw the birthday girl looking angrily at her. Amy, said Lauren with the same tone Renee called out to her. Who else would it be? Look what you did to my face. I'm horrible, Amy sobbed angrily while pointing to her body. She too was glowing pink, and Lauren could see through Amy's abdomen, but not clearly. The white light blurred her vision. Nevertheless, she was easily identifiable in her bathing suit and bruised similarly to her body. Lauren didn't know how to react. She didn't think they were dead because they were still alive in spirit. Everything was happening too fast. Is she dead? Asked some of the teen girls about Lauren. Ambulance is on the way, said Peter to the Thompsons coming out of the house. Oh my God, Amy, said Amy's mother, pushing her way through the guests. Hey, call Lauren's parents. Mr. Thompson, please help me, please, said Jason. Lauren turned to see Jason calling for help from Amy's father, who was trying to get the children away from his daughter. Amy ran towards Lauren with her fists clenched. Look at my parents. They're going crazy, and it's all because of you. And why is Jason over there next to you? You did this to get his attention, didn't you? Do you realize what you've done? My life is over, said Amy. She renewed her assault, and they grappled among the crowd surrounding their bodies. Lauren tried to defend herself, but she was surprised Amy's attack still hurt. Her punches were just as potent. Renee instinctively ran to break them up when a brilliant light blinded them, ending their battle. Coming down the road where the truck had blazed through moments before, the light got stronger and then dimmed. Lauren could see 2 unicorns drawn to a black carriage with a black cloaked figure at the reins. The unicorn's skin glowed in the moonlight. Its white mane flipped wispily, even though its head rocked back and forth violently. Lauren could see the driver's inhuman form underneath his heavy cloak and garments. Their hands on the reins were skeletal. Its wings were black and worn. His face was decaying with one functioning eye, and the other its bony, empty socket. Amy hid behind Lauren, terrified as the carriage door swung open and a ghost stepped out. It was a black female. Her face was heart-shaped, young and unblemished. Her eyes were slim and brown, her eyebrows perfectly trimmed. Her hair was black and shiny, straight at the top but curly towards the ends, and it reached past her upper back. She wore a full-length skirt, a collarless blouse, and a cloak all radiantly white. At the bottom of her cloak raged an animated blue fire. The girls thought she was the prettiest woman they'd ever seen. The cloak design on the ghost's back that Lauren couldn't see just yet was of 3 framed doors, with the middle door taller than its 2 tightly packed neighbors. The doors cracks, filled with lines of light, and occasionally a particular door will swing open, displaying earthly scenes of fiery hell or pure radiance. Outlined slightly white was a castle floating upon a floating landmass. I'm sorry, outlined slightly white was a castle upon a floating landmass that would disappear occasionally. The ghost smiled and outstretched her hand, beckoning them forward. Lauren noticed that her hands were pink while the rest of her visible brown skin gave off a slight blue hue. Come forward. I know you're shocked. Death can do that. But we must hurry because we have others to pick up tonight, spoke the ghost. They didn't move, so the ghost slowly approached them. My name is Nasra Rollins, district purveyor of the Revenant City, and your guide for tonight. What's yours? She asked gently. I'm Lauren, and this is Renee and Amy, she said, pointing to her friends as she identified them. Nasra simply nodded at Renee, but turned her attention to Amy, who was trembling behind Lauren, and spoke directly to her. Amy, there's nothing to fear. Not even my decrepit driver, said Nasra. No, I don't ride with strangers, and where will you take us? Asked Amy. I'm taking you to a place where you'll be safe and under the judge's protection. If you come with me, I promise you might return to your mortal life. Come. Nasra outstretched her hand again. Lauren took it, and Renee pushed Amy along. Nasra turned slowly, and they made their way to their carriage. Lauren drew back as they approached the coachman, but Nasra pulled her on. Don't be afraid. His name's Grimsley, and he's more friendly and talkative than you'd think, said Nasra. She introduced the girls to the cloak-clad driver, who tugged his hood towards him as if he was tipping a hat. I hope not everyone we pick up tonight is as apprehensive, said Grimsley to Nasra in a deep, breezy voice. Nasra saw Amy's bikini and gave her a cloak to cover herself. Once the girls boarded, they sat on the left as far away from the driver as possible, and Nasra sat on the right. Lauren watched the sight of their demise from their windows. Apparently, the crowd couldn't see them, the unicorn's brilliance, or the carriage. They began moving. Where are we going? Asked Lauren nervously. To safety in the Amalgam realm, but first we have to make a few stops, said Nasra, as the carriage picked up more speed and rocked its riders from side to side as if they were traveling upon a mountain pass. What's Amalgam? Asked Renee. It's the ghost world. You're in it right now. This district is what we call the Revenant City. It's as much Amalgam as it is mortal land. And don't worry, you won't be alone, said Nasra as she pointed out the window. The girls could see more unicorn-drawn carriages carrying passengers. They were crossing the bridge over Arthur Sound, and in the moonlight, Lauren counted 8 carriages flying about the mainland and Outer Banks. The unicorn's ghastly neighs and one skeletal creature's fierce gaze at her had Lauren frightfully turning away from the window. Is Grimsley a ghost? Asked Lauren. He's a reaper. Reapers are fallen angels whose glorious bodies starve to their present state for their inaction during the great sin. Since they didn't fully turn away from God, they will regain all the power and splendor of their former selves by faithfully serving the court. Every night, reapers accompany us in the gathering of the Revenant City. They scare off cold spirits and demons in order to usher spirits into the purgation or infernal realms. Angels are the most powerful beings in Amalgam, and reapers, being weakened angels, aren't too inferior, which is why we encourage ghosts to cooperate with us. Their unbearable hunger is temporarily satiated after they return from a successful gathering, and any unnecessary delay really upsets them. Why are you gathering souls? Asked Renee. Every soul in the Revenant City gets trapped here due to the mortal land seal. We have to search for each spirit individually and transport them to the gathering plains of New Elysian. The Reapers can find a spirit anywhere in the Revenant City. Oh, God. Amy said, oh, God, none of this makes any sense. Reapers and ghosts, what happened to the tunnel with bright lights? You know, the simple stuff people said they saw when they died. Wait, are we dead? Not yet, but don't worry. Your fate will be explained soon. Concerning the bright light, I'm not the one to ask about that. I also died in the Revenant City some 300 years back. Grimsley picked me up along with another purveyor. Lauren looked at Nasra's abdomen and saw a bright light emanating from within. What's this light in our stomachs? Asked Lauren, pointing to her own radiance. Bioluminescence, our light source brought out during the night by a liquid substance we call spectroplasm. Trees, animals, natives, nearly anything which uses this substance will light up the night, said Nasra. Lauren listened intently and watched fearfully as she saw the reapers about the mainland. They dove into Baker's Creek like scavenging vultures picking up the dead. She worried about her mother, who would soon get the news of her demise. Anita would start crying again, and Lauren hated that she and Willem were putting her through so much stress. She wondered if her death would help her parents reconcile or drive them further apart. They arrived on the mainland and passed by Sailor Lake, where they halted briefly. Nasra and Grimsley looked outside towards the cliff underneath the lighthouse, where another carriage was strangely idle. They didn't see the reapers, unicorn, the purveyors, or any passengers, and a dark mist filled the scene. Who drives that carriage? Grimsley asked Nasra. He said, Uriel. They must have had a battle with a Phoenix loyalist. There's necrosidium everywhere. Let's take a look. Nasra and Grimsley left the carriage and strode into the lake towards the abandoned coach. The girls looked out the window as they waded through the water. Nasra and the reaper walked about the coach looking for any passengers and called out for Uriel and the purveyor. They returned minutes later, and Nasra said she'd informed the bandits about this incident. They were off again, leaving Kell Road for Kepchar Street. They were so close to Evelyn Lane that Lauren wished the driver would take her home. She would jump into bed and wake from this nightmare, alive in her body to find her parents happily married and Jason single. As if Grimsley could read her mind, he turned onto her street. Ecstatic, Lauren prepared to run immediately as the carriage stopped. However, she didn't move a muscle once she saw why they were on Evelyn Lane. Kevin Vastek, her next-door neighbor and family friend, was sitting on his porch amazed as he covered his face from the unicorn's brilliance. Vastek was 80 years old, but Lauren recognized him from his older photographs when he was in his early 30s during the 1950s. He is a white man with blue eyes, a long nose, bulging biceps, and his hair was shaved close on the sides, but the top was longer and trimmed flat. When he caught sight of Nasser, he smiled and grew his hair into the slick ducktail of his youth. Lauren saw her animated cloak as she invited him aboard, and while walking back, Vasek flirted with her. Nasra blushed, but not because she was attracted to him. After many years of gathering spirits, they still surprised her. Vasek approached the carriage door and jerked back with surprise when he saw Lauren. He sat across from Renee before he spoke to her. "What happened to you, Lauren?" asked Vasek. Lauren glared at Amy. "It wasn't my fault," said Amy angrily, crossing her arms. "Car accident. You?" asked Lauren. "Old age," said Vasek with a sigh. "Why do you look different?" Lauren asked as he sat in the carriage. Vasek shrugged his shoulders. Nasra said, anyone who dies above the age 33 reverts to that age upon their death. However, some can still choose to represent themselves as older or younger, and many do in Amalgam. "Why 33, said Lauren. "It's the age of our Savior's death," said Nasra. "Jesus?" "Yes." "I've never been religious, but at least it's good to be young again," said Vasek, smiling and stretching back. "That's probably why you'll be in Amalgam for a while," said Nasra. Vasek asked Nasra what Amalgam was, and she informed him just as she did with the girls. "I haven't seen you in a while, Lauren. How's school going?" She raised her brow in disbelief, as did Vasek when he noticed her surprise. "Sorry, I guess I've already become comfortable with death. I've certainly been expecting it for the past 5 months. Does your mother know what happened to you?" "I don't know," said Lauren. He said, but then he gazed out the window and spoke. "She does now." Lauren moved to the window and saw Anita running down the porch, jiggling the car handle and then searching quickly through her purse for her keys. They were moving again, drawing closer to Anita, and Lauren saw that she was scared. "Mom, I'm fine. Really, I am." "Don't be frightened, Mom," shouted Lauren. She was leaning out the carriage window, screaming for her mother. Nasra covered her mouth and pulled her back inside. "Don't scare her," said Nasra. "How can I scare her when she didn't even see me?" asked Lauren, looking as her mother got into the car and drove fast to the Outer Banks. "There are ways, and your emotions will bring them out. Mortals can see, feel, and hear us if the conditions are right, even fear us if we're up to no good. You don't want to kill your mother to let her know you're dying, do you?" "No," said Lauren as she sat back. "Dying?" asked Vastek. "Yes, dying. Just wait, it'll all be explained," said Nasra. They left Everin Lane and made several other stops. After Vestec filled the carriage, every subsequent stop stretched the interior with an aisle between the seats and the door. The carriage had gone from comfortably seating 5 to 20, and it appeared more like a stretched hearse. It also became quite unruly, with passengers complaining that they weren't ready to die. "Who's going to feed my cat?" asked a middle-aged woman who had half her hair in her rollers and wore a wet nightgown. The rest of her hair stood up on her head. Even in death, the electric shock she received while taking a bath carried its mark into the afterlife. "Damn, I forgot to write my will. Now my cokehead sister's going to get all my money," said an elderly man. "When is this ride going to park me at my body? I want to get back to the living. This dead thing isn't working. Now, Nasser, you promised," said Amy as she bargained with the exhausted purveyor. "I want you to let me out. I'll find my way back into my body and forget this ever happened." "It's not going to happen until we reach New Elysium," said Nasra. "But it may happen, right?" asked Amy. Yes, said Nasra. "What?" a young male ghost cried out. A bullet scarred his head. The hole was still smoking and blood covered his shirt. He was a gas station attendant and looked as if he'd been assaulted by his killer. He said, "Why did she get a second chance? I got shot on the job and I'm only 17. "You'll find out why, but you're not getting a second chance no matter what happens, so get used to being dead," said Nasra. She pulled from her garments a rolled piece of parchment, unfastened the seal, and unfurled the sheet. "Roll call. Mr. Kevin Vastek." "Here," said Vastek. "Miss Gloria Donnelly." "Present," said the electrocuted woman. Nasra called out name after name, and everyone replied in their various ways except for 3. "Everyone's accounted for. Another successful gathering," Nasra told the coachman. Renee said, "Excuse me, you didn't call our names." Nasra said, "I wasn't supposed to. You 3 weren't called tonight. You just happened to enter the spirit world." Renee looked worried, but Nasra stilled her fears, saying, "Just relax. How are we doing, Grimsley?" "We're almost at the mansion," he said. Lauren grabbed the windowsill, and they saw they were turning into a private drive named Ardmore Lane. Behind them, the other 8 carriages filed in line from various streets in the sky above between the tall trees flanking the road. A car was driving in the opposite direction, and Lauren feared it would crash into him, yet it phased through the caravan in its path with less resistance than the night air. They were approaching a mansion called Monroe's Manor by townspeople and the ghosts in the coach, but none aboard or any of Baker's Creek residents had ever been inside to her knowledge. Thanks to her chance encounter with Meaner, she was the only collected soul in the carriage to have met a Monroe in person. The mansion's impressive French Renaissance design drew hundreds of tourists to the gates of this private property, and tonight they witnessed something no other sightseer had ever seen. The mansion grounds were covered in a gold half-circle shield, but Lauren couldn't see where it originated from. As they entered the shining barrier, yellow light warmed their hands. Strangely, the light warmed everyone's right hand while it heated Lauren's left. When this happened, the ghost discovered the small graphical icons where the light touched, and as everyone began asking about them, Nasra stood and silenced them all, saying, "I'm taking you to a place where your questions will be answered." With that, every ghost drew quiet, and Lauren returned to surveying the mansion grounds. On guard at the gates were 2 previously invisible spectral coats of armor, but tonight they stood evident to spectral eyes. Their visors lifted as if they were talking. They shifted their spears, and their helmets followed the first carriage as it approached the gate. There, Nasra spoke to one of the armored suits, reporting the abandoned Reaper carriage, and asked Mina to have guards investigate. A disembodied female voice rang out, advising the requested soldiers were on their way, and Lauren was impressed the armor doubled as a communication device. Also invisible to mortal eyes was a giant hand shield on the gate that read Amalgam House, the mansion's true name. The shield split in half as the gate opened and the carriages entered. The house had 3 stories, a multitude of windows, doors, and balconies for each level that stretched alongside the entire house. It had a smooth beige color with no cement lines and no overgrown vegetation or visible deterioration. The house appeared quite immaculate given its age. Vasek said, "Ever since I was a boy, I wondered what was inside this house. I heard it belonged to some reclusive millionaire, but I never would have guessed it's filled with ghosts. Hopefully we'll get to go inside." "Not tonight, but if you wish to tour Amalgam House, you'll have to apply with the Revenant City District Representative." "And is that you?" asked Vastek with a charming smile. "No, an elderly mortal woman named Mina Monroe, the best oracle in mortal land. She's in the employ of the court." Lauren now knew that Mina was more than what she initially appeared to be, and that she was connected to a government of ghostly beings. Like everyone else in her company, Lauren had learned far more about Baker's Creek in the first short hours since meeting Mrs. Moreau than she had ever known about the town in her young life. What's with the names? What's Mortal Land? Asked Amy, frustrated. It's what we call the land of the living, said Nasra. What are oracles? Asked Renee. Oracles are mortals who have been allowed by the judge to speak with spirits. They serve a particularly useful position here because of the deceptions cold souls play on the living. Oracles can speak directly to the court's communication devices, interpret dreams, and excel at healing magic, said Nasra. Renee's eyes widened with intrigue, and she smiled while Nasra mentioned these abilities. She was going to speak, but withheld her comments after hearing Nasra's response to Vastek's question. What's the court? Asked Vastek. That will be explained at the procession, said Nasra. The carriages passed a fountain in the middle of the front lawn. It held a statue of 3 doors that ran water from the cracks of its frames. As they rode around the mansion's left wing, Lauren saw a golden jewel on the roof that projected the perimeter shield, and several gargoyles rested on their haunches, snarling at any carriage passenger who looked at the gem. Grimsley drove the carriage to the rear grounds, giving Lauren an extensive view of Amalgam House's exterior. Much of the back lawn was an extensive vegetable garden and a fruit orchard that hugged the mansion's rear terrace. There was also a gazebo with a fountain inside of it where cherubim danced about the bowl and expelled water as they played like children. A small chapel and the Moreau family cemetery was across the lawn, and farther in the distance was a large pond with spectral ducks wading through the water. Grimsley drove towards a gloomy garage near the gazebo. No light left its door, and as they entered, even the light from the unicorns ebbed to darkness. In the gloom, they approached a 12-foot-high, 10-foot-wide steel oval ring where a black and white mist issued into the hole like water from sprinklers and mixed into a grayish spray. The carriage entered the ring. Everyone felt their stomachs tighten and pull. They felt as they were moving at various speeds, as fast as light one moment and slower than turtles walk the next, until a white haze blinded them. A blistering chill swept through the carriage. Lauren and the passengers were freezing, and everyone except Nasra and Grimsley wailed in pain. Well, that was Chapter 2, Gathering of the Revenant City. Chapter 3 is called Barren City Procession. We will resume this once I have restarted the stream, so I will see you soon. Once again, buy The Ghost of Amalgam, The Linking Tomb on Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com or BN.com. and outskirtspress.com/Justin Freeman. Thank you so much.